The Gentile Christians who stayed in Rome after the Jewish expulsion by Emperor Claudius around AD 49 to 50 played a key role in shaping the early Christian community in the city. Here's more about what happened to them and how their presence influenced the development of Christianity in Rome. Rise of Gentile Christians in Rome. When the Jewish Christians were forced to leave Rome, Gentile Christians, those who were not of Jewish descent but had come to faith in Jesus, remained. This shift had several important consequences. 1. Gentile leadership in the Roman Church. With the departure of Jewish Christians, Gentile believers naturally took on more prominent leadership roles within the Roman Church. This changed the dynamics of the Christian community, which had previously been more Jewish in its traditions and customs. Gentile Christians, who did not observe Jewish laws like circumcision or dietary restrictions, likely began shaping the church's practices and teachings in a way that was distinct from Jewish customs. 2. Growing divide between Jewish and Gentile Christians. Over time, a tension began to grow between Jewish and Gentile Christians. Jewish Christians continued to observe the Mosaic Law, Torah, while Gentile Christians did not feel bound by these laws. The letter to the Romans, written by the Apostle Paul, reflects this growing divide. Paul addresses both groups, urging unity and reminding them that salvation is through faith in Christ, not through the observance of the law. Romans 14 is a key passage where Paul speaks to this issue. He tells the Roman Christians not to judge one another over differences in diet, Jewish Christians following kosher laws versus Gentile Christians eating all kinds of food, or the observance of certain holy days. Paul's letter to the Romans. Paul's letter to the Roman Church, written around AD 57, addresses the growing Gentile Christian community. He emphasizes the importance of unity between Jewish and Gentile believers and reminds them of their shared faith in Jesus Christ. In Romans 3:22-23, Paul writes, "There is no difference between Jew and Gentile, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." This was a central theme in Paul's theology. Whether Jew or Gentile, all are justified through faith in Christ. Paul also cautioned the Gentile Christians against arrogance or believing they had replaced the Jews as God's chosen people. In Romans 11, verse 17-24, he uses the metaphor of an olive tree, explaining that Gentiles have been grafted into the tree of God's people, but they should not become proud, as the natural branches, the Jews, could also be grafted back in. Nero's persecution of Christians. As Gentile Christians gained influence in Rome, they also faced new challenges. Under Emperor Nero, who came to power after Claudius, Christianity began to be viewed with suspicion. In AD 64, a great fire broke out in Rome, and Nero famously blamed the Christians for starting the fire, which led to the first significant persecution of Christians in Rome. Nero's persecution was brutal, with Christians being executed in horrific ways, such as being burned alive, crucified, or fed to wild animals in public spectacles. While the Jewish Christians had only recently returned to Rome after the expulsion, it was primarily the Gentile Christians who had remained in the city that faced the brunt of this persecution. Paul's martyrdom. It was during Nero's persecution that the Apostle Paul was believed to have been martyred. As a Roman citizen, Paul was likely beheaded around AD 64 to 67. Peter, another leading figure in the early church, was also martyred in Rome during this period, according to tradition, by crucifixion. Impact on the Roman Christian community. Despite the persecution under Nero, the Christian community in Rome continued to grow. The resilience of the Gentile Christians who remained in the city helped establish Christianity as a lasting presence in Rome, which would eventually become the center of Christian faith. After Nero's death in AD 68, persecution eased, and the Christian church in Rome became more structured, with formal leadership developing over time. The Gentile Christians played a significant role in this process, as many of them had now been leading the church for years. Continued tensions between Jewish and Gentile Christians. Even after the return of Jewish Christians to Rome, tensions between Jewish and Gentile believers persisted. Paul's letter to the Romans indicates his desire to address these tensions and promote a spirit of unity and love. Romans 15:7 speaks to this, where Paul encourages them to accept one another, then just as Christ accepted you, in order to bring praise to God. Conclusion: the Gentile Christians who stayed in Rome during the Jewish expulsion became key figures in the development of the Roman Church. They faced internal challenges, such as navigating their relationship with Jewish Christians, as well as external threats, particularly under Nero's reign. However, through it all, their faith and leadership laid the foundation for what would become one of the most important Christian communities in history. Their endurance through persecution and their willingness to embrace a faith in Jesus that transcended Jewish law helped shape the trajectory of Christianity, not only in Rome, but throughout the world.